StraightallDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn to discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is what you already knew was coming. I told you this was coming. We did a 3-part series on why MAGA is terrible for the United States of America. Now we're going to do a 3-part series on why MAGA is great. Why MAGA is actually great for America is literally called Make America Great Again. So why is MAGA making America great again? Or if you thought it was already great, keeping it great. We're going to get into that in a moment. First of all, let me remind you of a couple things. First of all, my email list. You can get on it for free by going to workonmygame.com. I send emails out every day. I call it the Daily Game. You get those straight to your inbox free of charge. Just go to workonmygame.com. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. If you'd like to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach, have me as a trainer for your team in your business, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can learn more about working with us, what we do, who we help, and how we help them. Again, that link, both links are down below in the description to this episode. So getting into this topic, I was actually going to, when I first came up with this idea, I knew I was going to argue both sides. I was going to argue the why MAGA is great for America first, then I was going to do why it's terrible, but I decided to flip it around. I did why it's terrible first, now I'm going to do why it's great. So I already gave you the explanation in the previous 3 episodes of what I was doing and why I'm talking about this. And it's important to understand, just to give you all a frame overall why I'm even talking about either one of these, that if you're going to put yourself out there professionally, you must know what your superpower is. And I'm not talking about Donald Trump, I'm talking about myself. You put yourself out there professionally, you have to know what you do best. What I do best, my superpower, is not basketball or mindset or business or discipline or podcasting or writing books or any of those things that you may know about me. My superpower is my ability to break down a subject, do so logically and as objectively as humanly possible, and then be able to argue any angle or side of that exact topic. Even if I have a certain opinion that is on one side, I can still argue opinions on other sides of the exact point. So to that end, what I'm doing in this series, you already heard this in the previous 3 episodes, I am leveraging my superpower by doing something that most people do not have the ability to do. And this is what makes me more valuable, because I have a skill that most people don't have, because I have this scarce resource and ability to argue both sides of this MAGA thing. Most people are either strongly on one side or another, or if they're not, I don't think they can make the case for either side the way that I have in previous episodes and the way that I'm going to in the upcoming episode. So I'm arguing both sides of this topic. You already heard the negative side today, tomorrow, and the day after. I'm gonna give you the positive side. Let's get into it. Point number 1. Today's topic, once again, is why MAGA is great for America. Number 1, America first. America first. Why is MAGA great for America? Is because its leader, Donald Trump, has decided to put America first. Let me ask a question. Who listening to this has a problem, if you are an American, who has a problem with America being first if you actually live in America? Now, what else would you rather prioritize? What else would you rather prioritize besides America? Now, some Americans may not understand it in the moment. Putting America first is a wonderful idea that Donald Trump has campaigned on for the entirety of his time in the political spotlight. I think this is a great idea because his focus is on Americans who feel themselves losing the understanding of what it actually means to be America as a country and American as an individual. They see so many people coming into our country. There are a lot of people coming into the country, people who have no respect for what this country is and what it was. And no one is forcing them to assimilate to any set standards of how things go in the United States of America. And there's a problem with that. I explained this when I did my series on immigration. When you go to other countries and you look to move in, first of all, the only way you can fast track your way to moving into other countries, and when I did my series on immigration, I gave you the exact numbers for several countries. The only way you can fast track your way into citizenship in other countries is you have to make a 6-figure contribution to their tax base, to their real estate program, and to some type of fund that they have that is designed specifically to allow outsiders like you to come in. You got to put 6 figures into their system in order to even be let in. If you're not bringing that, you can't come in. These are literally laws on the books that they have in these other countries. In America, we're allowing people in and giving them things, and they don't have to give anything back in exchange. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. What I'm saying is Donald Trump saying we're going to put America first is he's kind of saying, wait a minute, let's put a little bit of a stop to that and let's focus on America first before we start focusing on everybody who ain't from here trying to get in. Because other countries don't allow our people to just jump into their spaces. They don't allow it. So why do we need to allow it? I believe that's a legitimate argument. That's a legitimate point. And there are Americans who've been here for a long time who feel as if they've been marginalized, ignored, in favor of people who are much more focused on being global citizens, whether fellow Americans or immigrants coming in. And whatever the hell it means to be a global citizen. People call themselves global citizens, don't even have a passport, but they think, well, we need to be part of all of the world. It's not just about America. I disagree. I think it is just about America. And if you want to just live in America, never travel anywhere because you love America so much and you like it here more than you think you like it anywhere else, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, in other countries, you can't just come in there if you're not from there. You cannot just walk into those countries and become a citizen unless you are solidly, financially, tangibly contributing to what they have going on. And they will tell you exactly what you have to give. And it's something tangible. It's not you got to pass the test. It's you have to give. You got to put the money on the table or you cannot come in. And again, I'm not making that up. Listen to the series where I did immigration. I actually gave you the numbers of different countries, and the countries that I named, each one of them, it was at least a six-figure investment. And most of the time it was into some type of real estate system that they have in the country for you to get fast track citizenship. So one thing we can be sure America first means is that being a person of the world is, well, one thing, not America first, excuse me, being a global citizen means is people are focusing more on being a person of the world than they are focused on being a citizen of America. The great thing about Donald Trump and MAGA is that he knows that there's a large portion of the American population who don't like this trend and are willing to fight back against it. You know this because you see the election results. Moving on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is why MAGA is great for America. Number 2, stronger border security and stronger immigration control. As I said in the series on immigration, one of the problems that America has had with immigration is that we got a little bit too loose and too lax in the enforcement of our immigration laws. We do actually have laws on the books when it comes to immigration, but looking from the outside looking in, it would seem as if we didn't. All that happened, for those who don't understand, is that during the Trump administration, he issued executive orders that demanded that the border laws and rules be more strictly enforced. He did not create new laws. He just said, we're going to enforce these laws more strictly than they had been being enforced. Then when he was out in 2020, or in 2021, when Biden came in, Biden issued executive orders to relax the enforcement of the laws. That's how we got so much more immigration. And then when Trump came back in 2025, he issued executive orders to re-strengthen the enforcement of those laws all over again. Neither president created any new laws. All they did was just decide how much those laws are going to be enforced or not be enforced. And Donald Trump is just more strictly enforcing the laws and rules that we have at our borders and when it comes to immigration in general, and also when it comes to controlling immigration and getting people who don't belong here out of here. Again, these are not new laws. These are laws that are already on the books. So people really need to understand when you see people like Tom Homan, who I believe he's in charge, I forget what his position is, but he's in charge of, basically he's going to be the border czar, as they call it. Him saying all these things that they're going to do and them actually going out and doing it is not some new law or even a new initiative that got created by the United States government. These laws are already enforced. All Tom Homan is doing is enforcing the laws that already exist. The only reason that it seems like he's doing something extreme is because the previous administration was not enforcing the laws. Donald Trump did not get a new law passed in order to do these things. If people really understood that, then you might come to understand, those of you who are able to think logically and detach yourself emotionally, you might come to understand, wait a minute, how are they just enforcing the laws, but it seems like they're doing 10 times more in the previous administration? Exactly. All right, that's the fucking point. What were they doing in the previous administration that the laws allowed them to do a lot more than what they were doing? Why do you think that is? You should think about that. Not all Americans want more and more immigrants coming into this country. And again, that does not make those Americans wrong. Some of you listening to this are indeed immigrants. Some of you are married to immigrants. Some of you come from, maybe you're not an immigrant, but your parents or their parents were immigrants. So you maybe have an issue with people having an issue with immigration. I would suggest that you don't. All right, you're an immigrant, you're here, fine. That does not mean that every immigrant who wants to come into this country should be allowed in just because you got in. That's not what it means. If a country just allows more and more people who are from the outside to come in and infiltrate what's going on, then eventually what the country was will no longer be the country because we're allowing so many outsiders to come in. Again, if you have a glass of water and you start pouring milk into it, you pour enough milk into the glass of water, you no longer have water. Does that matter? Yes, it does. And Donald Trump's whole campaign was based around this. It was based around, hey, we want Americans to know that they live in America. We don't want this to be that much. It can be a melting pot, but not that much of a melting pot. And again, you may agree or disagree with Donald Trump's approach to this, but you can see by the results of the election that there are a lot of Americans who agree with him. Again, this was the main thing of his campaign was America first, reducing immigration, and focusing on people who are already here. This is the biggest piece of his campaigns all three times. So again, you have your own opinions on this, but again, it's not the topic is not your personal opinion. The topic is, if you're saying a positive point for MAGA, you have to mention immigration because this is a big part of what this was about. The reality is a big part of the MAGA movement is an emphasis on and a focus on serving people who are already here and who have been here rather than trying to bring more people in from the outside. Those of you who are immigrants, so you come from immigrant stock, whatever country you come from, can an American just go over there and just become a citizen pretty quickly and just do what they want to do and not bring anything tangibly to the table and become a citizen in the country that you come from? The answer is no, they can't. Because no other country in the world allows the level of immigration that America allows. No other country allows this. So for Donald Trump to say, listen, why do we got to be the ones that accept everybody's refugees and people seeking asylum and people getting shipped out of the country and people who just want to come over here, but no other countries accepting our people? So this is an unfair deal. And Donald Trump said, we're not going to do any more unfair deals. And he has a right to that. You may disagree with it. But again, the argument here today and in this mini series is, what are the positive things that someone who is in agreement with it, what would they say and why? That's the argument that I'm making here. So I do understand why there is some pushback against this, as many of us know some immigrants, and some of you have immigrants in your families or in your businesses, and some of you are immigrants. That does not invalidate the point that many Americans who have been here for generations do not want to be washed out, outnumbered, and replaced by people who cannot say the same about themselves and their ancestors. Because again, look at the country you come from. Do they allow that many immigrants on a percentage basis to come into the country you and your family come from the way that America allows it? The answer is no, they don't. And I understand America and your country are not the same. But at the same time, Donald Trump has a legitimate argument when he says this. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why MAGA is great for America. Number 3, energy independence focus. Now, we all know that energy is one of the 5 forms of investment. And energy is 85% of the job in life. And when I say energy, what I'm talking about here is specifically like tangible energy that we use, like when you turn on your lights and run your cars. This is not an area in which I have expertise. I don't have expertise in the energy sector, but I do understand English. So again, I'm making the argument, the pro-Trump argument here, not as an expert. I don't need to be an expert on the subject in order to break it down and explain it, as long as I understand it well enough to make a point, which is what I'm doing here. I understand that Donald Trump he's been continually pushing that America is going to be energy independent. And America is not going to be so dependent on other countries for our sources of energy. Again, this is completely aligned with the America First concept, which he has always stood by and always pushed from the very beginning. He's never bent or changed his mind on this. So again, no one can say he's not consistent. I am on board with the idea in theory of America being energy independent, even though I do not know how it will or would be executed in detail. But I am on board with the concept of America being energy independent and our country not being dependent on XYZ other country in order to have energy. I would be on board with this theory coming from anybody, even if it wasn't Trump. If it was coming from the political left, I'd be on board with it as well. Why? Because I would rather the country that I'm a part of to be as independent as possible, i.e. reliant on ourselves rather than relying on another country. Because if something happens to that country, or there's some issue with importing, exporting, or there's some type of war, or they get cool with somebody that doesn't like us and then they want to raise the prices on us, or they say, no, you can't have any. Now we're shit out of luck and stuck because we're dependent on them. I am 100% on board with anything that has to do with the entity I'm a part of being as self-reliant and self-sufficient as possible, to where we can help others and others can help us, and not because we need them, but because we want to deal with them. We don't want to be in a position of needing anyone, because then they can use that against you. And Donald Trump completely understands this as a businessman. And I think other politicians have understood it as well, but they don't have it in their bones the way that he does as an entrepreneur, where you really have to consider these things in order to keep your business afloat. Whereas you work in the government, you have the You have the bureaucracy kind of working as a safety net for you no matter what you do. You don't think about it the same way when you're a career politician, like all the other politicians we've seen this century. So again, I don't know how this will be executed, but I'm on board with the concept. All right. I'll be on board with this theory coming from anyone on any subject in which they say, let's make us, America, more independent on ourselves and less dependent on outside resources that we can't control. Again, who would want to be dependent on something that's not yours? I don't. Do you? I want to be dependent on something that's not mine. You've heard me say many times over the years, you don't want to build your business on a social media platform. Why do I tell you that? If you listen to me talk about it, you heard me explain it. You don't want to build your business to where the main source of you doing business and finding new business and all of that is through a social media platform such as YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. You don't want your business to be built on one of those platforms because you don't control the platform. And even though the platform may be working very fruitfully for you right now, at any moment you could lose access. What if they decide they don't like you anymore? What if they decide they want to change their rules and you have already violated it? What if somebody hacks into your account? What if they just change the way that the system operates? So what was working for you yesterday doesn't work anymore because they changed up the system. Now you're screwed because you built your whole business on a platform that you don't control. See, you don't want anything that you're relying on, such as the money that you bring home, to be dependent on something that you don't control, because now you're relying on something you don't have control over, which means you can lose the thing you're relying on at any moment because you don't have control. They got control over you. You build your business on a social media platform, you don't own a business. They own you. That's how it works. I've been talking about this for 10 years, by the way, for those who never heard me say this. I've been saying these things. It's the same thing with America. If we're getting all of our fuel for people's cars from another country, what happens if our relationship with that country or our access to that country gets compromised in some way? Well, now nobody can put gas in their cars. Why should that be happening? That shouldn't be happening. So when you're on a social media platform, they control it. They have your followers, quote unquote, your followers are not yours, they're theirs. And you can lose your entire platform with the click of a button from somebody in power at one of these organizations. Why would you build your business on sand? You don't want to build your business on sand. You want to build it on rock. Rock is land that you control. So no smart person would ever do anything like this. And Donald Trump, again, regardless of how you feel about him personally, he's smart enough to understand this. He hasn't explained it in this way, but he understands it. No smart person wants to be completely dependent on an outside resources for something that you absolutely need all the time, because that puts you in a precarious position. Now, while I understand that there are costs that come with this energy independence, and a lot of Americans don't quite understand that on a logical level, that's the trade-off of this. The trade-off of energy independence is that the reason we depend on energy from other resources is because it's usually cheaper to get and cheaper to keep using. Our energy costs will go up if we become more independent, yes, and relying on ourselves than relying on others. And people are going to complain about that because they aren't even able to put two and two together. And because most people don't see past their noses, they only see the surface level of things. But I'm letting those of you who are wanting to know that that's the trade-off, is that the costs are going to go up. But independence ain't free. Freedom ain't free, ladies and gentlemen. Keep that in mind. You want to be free, you got to pay for it. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So independence is not free, ladies and gentlemen. Neither is freedom. And the freedom that Donald Trump is preaching, again, he couldn't tell you the trade-off, because if he told you, you wouldn't vote for him. But I'm telling you that it's coming. So when it comes, don't be surprised. All that being said, let's recap today's class. This is part one of our three-part series, Why MAGA is Great for America. I already made the argument for why it's terrible. You already know the frame of this, so let's just recap the points. Number one, Donald Trump said America first. If anything, the man is consistent. He has stuck to that point, and everything he says and does is about putting America first and Americans first. Speaking of such, number two, stronger border security and immigration control. He is focused on the Americans who are here. We are not trying to be this global safe haven where everybody can just come here and you can dump whoever you want into our country. Donald Trump said we're not doing that anymore. The previous administration said do as much as possible. This administration said we're not doing it. And again, you can't say the man's inconsistent. He has been talking about this for 10 years and he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Number three, energy independence focus. This is a big one because it's about America, first of all, being completely independent of other countries. We don't want to be relying on anyone. And as the allegedly still the most powerful nation in the world, there's no reason we should be relying on anyone for anything. They don't have a toehold on us. The trade-off of this is that it costs money. Independence and freedom are not free. That's the trade-off that's coming. A lot of people don't understand that. But when it comes, don't say that you were not warned by this very show. Make sure you go to workonyourgameuniversity.com so you can get into my coaching program and have me as your direct coach for your team, for yourself, for your business, and for your personal life. And also workonmygame.com. Get on my email list for free. Work on your game. Dre all